Welcome. I'm Sally Treanor, and I teach watercolor and I concentrate on technique. And today we're going to be doing some interesting things by preparing a ground for something that we don't exactly define yet. We're going to be making marks on our paper, and we are going to be putting resist, which means the paint won't stick. We're going to be using all kinds of tools to scratch and incise and turn that paper into something that we can't see yet. And then we will do layers and layers of very saturated paints. So let's begin. So I have here an eighth of a sheet of watercolor paper. Watercolor paper comes in standard 22 by 30 inches. And this is an eighth of that. And it's a very handy size, easy to accommodate with a work surface, but also controllable, and you can do things rapidly on it. And so this is 140-pound paper that has a very nice surface, which has a little bit of tooth to it, and it is called cold press. The other surfaces are hot press and rough, and those are descriptive terms. Hot press means like it's like they ironed it, so it's very smooth, and rough means it's much more obvious, a tooth to it that's hills and valleys. This is a standard paper that I use for teaching, and I do that because it's so durable and versatile and controllable. And I like students to have something that is dependable and always operates the same way. Let's veer away from that for a moment and talk a little bit about underpainting. Underpainting is usually when you work with either wet or dry paper and you start applying paint kind of abstractly. You keep it as clean as you can. You use a selected palette at a time, so that you are going to end up with a harmonious result. And then you let it dry and then you paint on top of it. We're going to add some elements this time, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. And we'll do that because it's going to make kind of exciting things happen that you don't completely control because you can't see what some of that stuff is. So let's just talk about things that make some of those things happen. For instance, you might want to burnish something, and that means that you would take something like this quarter and you would go, and what you're doing there is changing the surface. And you can't see what's going to happen when you put paint on that yet, but it's going to receive the paint differently. So I'm going to make some marks on this. This is just a quarter. And I'm not making them like polka dots, I hope. I'm going to connect them a little bit. And I don't know what's going to happen when I put paint on this. Okay, let's get rid of that. I'm going to use this, which is pointed. It's just a nail file, a metal one, to make some incision marks, not cutting the paper, but it's changing the surface again. Again, I cannot see it very well. I'm getting some light glance off of it, but it does not cut the paper. I'm not actually incising it. So I use it ordinarily as stylus. I might come back with that again. I'm going to keep it here. I like to put resists on the paper. That means that the paint's not going to stick to it. And I can use any color crayon I want to do that. I use white crayons when I just want the white of the paper to be there. But if I had colored crayons, that colored crayon, that wax, would still be there as I go forward with the painting. And so let's just use some white crayon. And again, I can't see what marks I'm making, but I can sort of see where stuff is. And so I want to make sure that I'm not making polka dots. I want irregular, kind of exciting strokes. I can see what I'm doing here. Permanent, permanent. It's always going to be there. Okay, and let's pick a yellow. So, all right, now resists. I don't usually use The liquid kind of resist. It irritates me. But this is a resist. This is a little dot that is adhesive, but not very. I'll be able to pick it off again. And I can see this. And it doesn't matter what color it is. It matters what size and shape it is. And I think it's fun to have areas that are going to surprise me because there's going to be no paint there when I finish this. I like to group things. I think they're way fun to do that with. And here's some bigger dots. And sometimes I overlap. I've overlapped crayon, so that's going to be an interesting sort of thing. But don't think you have to control all this because this is the first time you're doing this sort of thing. Okay, there's that. Okay, another thing that everybody has is masking tape. And so you might want to take little eccentric pieces of masking tape and different sizes, different shapes. And you just never know what's going to happen when you do this. And I think it's fun to do it blind so that you're really not completely in control of what your end results are going to be. I think I'll put some more circles. I like circles. I quite often end up doing these as fish. And so these are bubbles of air. Palette, triad. The only thing you have to pay attention to here for color is this green and this yellow. Okay. I am going to use an 1.5-inch brush. You can use anything you want, but again, I don't want to absolutely govern what's happening here. So I'm using a brush that I have a lot of control over, but not so much that I'm being terribly precise in how I'm applying the paint. Clearing my palette a bit. And I'm going to pick my triad and then I will stick to it. And if you are doing this yourself and picking a triad, write it on the back or on the front, wherever you want, so that you can remember what you did. And in this case, I'm going to use Winsor Yellow, French Ultramarine, and this is kind of unusual for me because it's staining. I'm going to use alizarin crimson. I'm going to kind of scrub up these so I get some nice saturated puddles. And I'm going to start with the yellow. And I'm just going to start applying paint. And I'm not going to pay a lot of attention to anything as far as shape. I'm not doing objects here. And I like to start with yellow because it is the lightest thing, and I'm dragging some of it so it doesn't go everywhere. And I think you can see that places where there's stickers or resist, I want you not to overwork your strokes. So make strokes, get out of them. Try not to leave bullseyes. Go off the edges. Okay. Rinse your brush thoroughly. Let's come in with the red. And some places I'm going to touch what's there. In some places I'm going to just go into white paper, changing direction and what's applied to the paper, different shapes of strokes. You have to do this fairly rapidly, and it's one of the reasons I like using a smaller piece of paper. Because I want I want to be able to interact with wet paint that's already there. Coming in with the blue. Do not brush this on strongly. Lay it on, let it flow out of your brush rather than brushing it on. I am thinking about distribution this whole time, about what's where. And now I'm letting water help me now. I'm keep going back into my pot of color so that I'm making sure I've got lots of saturation to add. Trying not to make mud. So now I have dry paper, and now is a point where I'm going to do a few more things that build on what's already there. So I am going to take my tape and cut some new shapes. And I'm going to cover up in eccentric shapes color. So now when I finish up and take these pieces of tape off, I will have put a resist over color. And it's something I might want to preserve because I like it, or it's just random. Mostly it's just random. I'm not making much in the way of judgments here. I do like some of these quite light areas, so I'm going to cover those up. Mind you, every place I put a resist before we had color on, when I take the resist off, if I can, like the little dots, it's going to be white paper. And now, anytime I take off the pieces of tape, the pieces of tape will be covering up something that's already colored or resisted. And that will give me new things, which is, again, interesting. And I don't know what's going to happen with some of that. Boy, I've got some really nice stuff happening because of the French ultramarine granulating out. Now I'm looking for interesting things that I want to preserve for sure. And some of that is the granulation. What I didn't do, sometimes I also spray this with water or alcohol to get different effects there, but I can do this in the next realm, but that's something I did leave out. Okay, now I'm sure you want to see what happens with this. Now, this is a time when I have to decide what it is I want to make happen that's going to be noticeable because I love these patterns that are in the doilies. Now, this is just an oil painting brush or acrylic. This is a stencil brush. Stencil brushes give very precise application that doesn't spread. So that's why I put out fresh paint, and I'm gonna work it through the holes. Can't do this with very liquid paint. It'll spread all over. You don't want that to happen. You can see what's happening here. So, this is just going to be very abstract, but it'll be abstract in its own way, doing a fun thing. I might have to switch to this other brush to do this better. Let me see how this brush works better, I think. Yes, definitely. See, I don't care it does if it doesn't come out looking like this. What I care about is adding texture now. So you can make patterns even with new patterns just by what you pick and how you place the. So I'm starting to get a pattern now of these little blue shapes. Now let's see what we want to do. Go to a new area on our doily, and let's see what that gives us. Gonna put that on pretty thick to get anything coming out of it. Oh, that's nice. I like that. Let's go over an area that actually has yellow in it, see what happens. That's interesting too. All right. Now I'm going to throw that away because otherwise I'll put my hand in it and just make another mess. Here's another kind of stencil. It's metal. So at any rate, you can do this with all different kinds of stencils. All right, one other thing that I think is very cool. This is just a piece of tile, and I'm gonna put fresh paint on this with a brush and then use it to stamp with. So let's see what happens. I'm going to take this, and I'm not going to do them all, and I'm not going to do them complete. So I'm starting to add thick paint out of the tube in kind of irregular places, putting the colors next to each other, letting them touch, paying attention to where they are in relation. Again, touching, overlapping. And I'm kind of looking at what's here, and we'll see what happens when I print with it. So you just put it down and press it and see what happens. Now I'm going to take more paint and cover more of the surface with paint in one color. Maybe a little red. And I'm picking up right to the edge so I get more suggestion of a square pattern. Maybe I will just clean that up a little bit, make it more of a square. Now, among other things, if you wanted to do this, you could take a spray bottle and fill it with a little bit of paint and add some water to it, shake it up and spray it. You could cover up things that might get in the way and take one of your brushes that has a lot of paint in it. Now we'll put a lot of water in it and start getting yet another pattern of shapes. And depending on how much water you have in that brush and what kind of trajectory you're using, now you get a whole bunch of little diddy dots, and they're fun. And again, with just the 3 paints that you've got in operation, you can even do this kind of dabbing, do them in clusters because they're interesting. But I really like the random scatter. It's even more interesting if you do this when in a spray bottle. The more water that you have in your brush, with pigment, of course, the bigger your dots are going to be. I have a lot of fun doing this splattering. There's something kind of breaking the rules about it because it's so random. Okay, now I don't want to overdo my time here for that. I have this little pick that I use for a bunch of things, and I'm going to use it to go to the edge of my little stickers that I put on here and remove them now. I want to see what I've left covered. So this is after we have removed the tape and the little dots, and we've got basically a piece of paper that has a lot of color, a lot of action, a lot of different textures, things going on it. And I have to decide right now, I think we have a lot of white, and I'm not going to leave that, but I'm also not going to do anything with it right now. But I'm thinking about things I might want to preserve that will get covered up, and you'll see what I mean by covered up in a couple minutes. But I think I'm going to go ahead and just add a few new resists. First with tape. This is a very narrow piece of tape, so I don't have to play so many games. And I'm just going to cover up some things that I like, that I want to make sure that I still have when I start to cover things up completely. But some of these areas are kind of interesting, and I want them to still be part of things. And if I don't, when I finish the painting, I'm still going to be able to cover them up with what I'm using to mask stuff as we go forward. I'm also I'm gonna retain some colored bubbles, maybe. I have decided, of course, to do a fish. And so I will draw that in so I don't confuse myself going forward. And now I have to make the decision about orientation. And I think I'm going to do a vertical. So I'm going to do this in pencil. And I need to do that so that I can paint around the image that I want. Other fin. Second fin. You'll notice I'm not being terribly careful about detail, and it's just outer shape. That's all I care about. I don't want to mess up my palette with the gesso. I also don't want to mess up my palette with any acrylics because it's permanent. I have to scrub it off, and this is a watercolor palette. I don't like to mix media on my palette and have something else included. So I'm going to do something that I actually haven't done before. These are acrylic tube paints. And this one is Winsor Newton. This one is Liquitex. You can get Liquitex anyplace. This is Ivory Black. This one's Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray has a blue tone to it. I haven't decided which one to use, and we'll just try to start with. So I'm using this plastic throwaway palette, so I'm not causing any adulteration of my regular palette, and that's important to me. Might be important to you also. That's why I mention it. So there's a blob of black, and it is ivory black. And just for interest, so let's just see what starts to happen. I'm using my regular brushes, but I'm going to be very, very careful to rinse them thoroughly because they will change the complement of your brush. A puddle that is not fully saturated, and I'm working my brush so I don't have any clear paint in it. What happens? I'm liking that I can let some of my beautiful babies show here. So I'm covering up things, but it's showing through. And it's covering up some of those white areas that I didn't leave covered. So it's getting rid of some of that. And now I'm using this acrylic paint like watercolor. So some of the same things apply as far as timing goes. You can end a stroke and then lose the edge so that you can come back to it and you don't have an edge to contend with. But now you're starting to see my fish come into being. But I've still got some of my pretty babies that I made before. Make sure you make your pencil lines pretty solid because it's easy to miss them. I'm kind of liking the places that I'm covering up those white areas. And because I'm staying pretty transparent here, I'm leaving myself lots of options to come back in and darken stuff. I'm not getting enough contrast here to show there's two fish, so I have to come back in. And here's where I start to make decisions about perhaps going into the gouache because it gives me a really thick coverage. So my thought is, what have I what have I made for myself? So far I've got kind of an illusioned fish, but not crisp and positive. So, but I can get darker with the paint. So I'm continuing to add more dark paint, but I'm still pretty transparent overall. And I'm thinking I'm not getting enough interesting contrast with this technique. There's too much stuff going on that I can still see. Not really, I'm not really enjoying my fish as much as I want to be. And I think it's because I painted over some of my lines. All right, I'm gonna switch to around and maybe come in. Let's see what happens if I come in with some Payne's gray, which is a little livelier than the black. I'm defining the second set of fins a little better than they were. Maybe some black in there. And remember, you're doing negative painting all this time. And don't forget to rinse your brush thoroughly to get rid of all the acrylic.